Welcome to BuzzWorthy Radio. Here's your host, Novell J. Lee.
We're back here with another one of The Buzz here at the BuzzWorthy Radio, continuing our coverage of the Tribeca Festival. Dan Fried is joining me right now to talk about Jean-Michel Basquiat, and just learning a little bit more about him has been very interesting so far. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for taking a few minutes out of your day to talk with me.
Absolutely.
So learning some of the background of him, at 7 years old, he was hit by a car, had to have his spleen taken out. He was born to a Haitian father, Puerto Rican mother. He also dropped out of high school, and he then started spraying graffiti around New York under the pseudonym Samo. And then after that, he met some of his idols, Andy Warhol being one in particular, and he then started drawing, painting. And one of his paintings I might have the year wrong, I think it was 2018, might be 2017, don't quote me on that just yet. I'll have it updated in the website, that his unnamed portrait sold for $110.5 million. And at the time, it was one of the highest grossing selling paintings that was ever done by someone in the States. That's insane. And it's also insane that this person who had so much influence was only on this earth for 27 years, basically. It's amazing that he had so much impact and we lost him at such a young age. For you to do this documentary, especially with the permission of the family, what was that like for you to go in and go through this, not knowing? And you can tell me if you did know his history as well. But if you did not, what was it like when you went into this? If you did learn the history, what was your takeaways from it when you started this project?
I think, and thank you for that background. That was a lot of homework. So, I think I obviously was familiar with him, before I came onto the project. But I think what drew me to this project was the opportunity to help tell the story of somebody who is a very well-known public figure, but the opportunity to tell it in a uniquely different way. Because a lot of people have perspectives of public figures, in just what they read in the headlines, what they've heard, right? Like in the research, like you just did, right? But to be able to hear it and have a story told authoritatively through the eyes of his family was very unique. So what drew me to coming on the project was that opportunity. Obviously, he's one of my favorite artists. I love art, but the opportunity to do that and to learn a lot about, him in things that I didn't know, right? In very unique and unexpected ways. So that's really what got me attracted to coming onto the project. And I'm really, really happy and glad that we were able to execute in such a beautiful fashion.
It's interesting as you're talking about this, and it made me think of, especially when I was doing my research on him, that even though that he went around with Al Diaz and under the pseudonym of Samo, and they were doing the graffiti, there was messages behind it. It wasn't something that they were going around and they were spray painting these buildings, but there was always a message behind it, which in turn, those messages were conveyed in also his paintings that he's done. So I thought I also kind of did one of those double takes going, that's very interesting to know that, because you kind of said it beautifully, where you think of something in one way and then you hear stories, well, at least for me, and it's shameful for me to say it this way, that you think of it in such a stereotypical way when you hear about people putting graffiti on buildings. But then when you're actually looking at it and you are seeing that there are messages that is tied behind it, especially that right now it definitely resonates, you definitely have a different perspective. And it really did open my eyes to it, and I applauded it. It really did. And I'm sitting here applauding it right now with some of the stuff that he has done, especially with some of the messages where it conveyed racism. It conveyed something that we like to say is no longer happening in our world. It's still happening in our world after 39 years after he's left this world. So very, very, very eye-opening for sure.
Yeah. And to your point, he always had a message behind the street art. He was very intentional with where he placed his art, because you have to remember, again, he was operating in a time, well before social media, right? So before anybody could take a picture and upload it to Instagram or anything like that. So he had to be very specific with his placement and his messaging to really make sure that people saw it and heard what he was trying to say.
Having this documentary premiere at Tribeca, which is one of the biggest festivals in the States, what what has that feeling been like, especially since he's from New York. So having this here in New York and premiering in front of this large audience of people, what was that for you in your mind when you heard this?
I mean, that it's great. It's the 25th anniversary of Tribeca. It's a New York artist, right? Arguably probably the most famous New York artist. One of them.
One of
Telling his story, having the opportunity to do that at Tribeca. For me, it's like the Knicks playing a finals game at home. It's amazing. And it's a wonderful opportunity.
Wonderful. And since we are talking about Rebecca, there is also another documentary that you were involved with that he also is at Tribeca this season. And Mark Maron, you also worked on the Are We Good documentary. And let me tell you, I feel that this man was such a pioneer for podcasting, and I humbly look up to him. I know people like to tell me, especially since I'll be celebrating my 20th anniversary of this show next November, not this November. So doing this for 20 years, but also seeing how this man was in the game long before podcasts became so standardized as a big medium that it is right now. I look up to that man, and I completely respect him in doing this. And when he left, and retired from the podcast scope, yes, devastated me, but also understood it, because this is a lot of work. I understand the burnout, and just for you to work with this man, I don't even know what to ask except what was that like, because I'm kind of fanboying a little bit.
No, I think what's unique about that, and this kind of goes to the edict, if you will, of my new company that I launched, Laurel Canyon Pictures, right? It's an opportunity to tell again, right, the story or a chapter in the life of somebody who is incredibly well known, is famous in their own right. But, in that project, that was pre Laurel, but it's the same thought, which is telling this chapter of just, I mean, did you see the film or no?
I have not yet.
Okay. So, I mean, it's really the opportunity to tell the story of incredible loss of a partner, and then your life and your earnings are basically around your ability to continue to be funny and tell jokes, right? So how do you reconcile those two things? And that was in a very the approach of telling that story in such a kind and careful and intimate way. Again, that's just, it continues. I can continue to be driven toward unique approaches to telling those types of stories. And Are We Good did an amazing job of telling Mark's story of just processing grief and getting back up there on stage.
Getting attached to that project, how did that even come into play for you?
I mean, so I kind of am always on the lookout for new projects. I'm bouncing back and forth between New York and Los Angeles a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing ideas and pitches and projects from lots of different perspectives. I'm always talking to lots of different people to see, what are people interested in beyond just what's in my algorithm and my feed, So that was one that crossed my desk. Obviously I knew who he was. And again, it was just, that was a take that I never would have expected, right? You say doc on Mark Maron. Okay, that's one perspective, but this is a whole new way to do it. And it was something that I just thought was really interesting, unique, and ultimately executed in a really tender and intimate way. And I'm really, really proud to be associated with that project.
Is with everything that you explain, especially with crafting documentaries, especially not just with those that are well known, but you're showcasing documentaries that have something fulfilling out of it, especially for those that we may not expect to see from. Is that one of the reasons why you created your production company, or was there any other reasoning behind crafting that?
No, I know. I think it's, you kind of touched on it. You got it. It's really just the ability to tell an amazing story. And I always go back to saying, I really think that a really well crafted, really well executed a piece of premium nonfiction can stand up to any of the best narrative features. Sometimes, maybe even a little bit more relatable because they're based on true stories. That was a big reason behind it. And then, Laurel Canyon Pictures, we're going to be, and we are, a filmmaker first company, but we want to find those stories, really champion the visions of the filmmakers. And I really, really believe that if you have a strong creative vision, a cohesive and well-crafted way to tell that creative story, I think that the business case always follows. So I'm always on the lookout for those types of things. And that was really the rationale, the mindset, and the edicts behind the venture.
Well, I'll tell you this. Once I watch the Mark Maron documentary, I'll let you know my thoughts on that for sure, because that is on the bucket list. I tried to see it months ago and no one got me the screener. So I will still work on getting that so I can see it. But I'm very invested in seeing that, and also this with Jean-Michel. So best of luck to you. I'm very honored that I got to talk to you about both of those projects with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing what more is to come from you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And let me be the first to congratulate you on 20 years when it happens. That's
well,
amazing.
thank you very much for that. Yes, I still don't know how I even made it this far, but you know what? I'm here, and I'm very honored to still do this after all this time, and having a lot of these creatives who I respect and love be a part of this journey with me. So it's been an absolute whirlwind in the best way possible.
Awesome, Matt. You're doing something right. Keep doing it.
Thanks for tuning in to The Buzz. Catch all episodes on Spotify. Remember to like and subscribe. Visit buzzworthyradiocast.com.